Going to Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy game, I was skeptical. Okay, I was extremely skeptical, and the reason why is that it was being created by the infamous Square Enix, not just something being created by Square Enix is a cardinal sin, but we all know that Square Enix has been releasing bangers, and still has been releasing bangers to this day. But Square Enix does have a couple of flukes, Babylon's Fall, and most importantly, making Marvel's games. Good lord. Now, if you go back to the beautiful year of 2020, you know Square Enix made this behemoth of garbage, Marvel's Cyberpunk Adventures. Now Lily, any clip I show you of Marvel's Adventures immediately summarizes the whole entire purpose of the game, so that leaves it at that. So there I am, sitting in my seat, booting up Guardians of the Galaxy for the first time. And holy mackerel, I could never be more wrong about a game that I could ever be. Because goddamn, this game is beautiful, amazing, top tier, and prove that Square Enix can make a Marvel game, a good one in fact. This game with virtually everything and anything against it, pushed through it, and gave us an amazing video game. So let's leave Marvel's Avengers alone, rush through the galaxy, listen to copyrighted music, and shoot spiky things into this mediocre review.
He knew that if he stayed with us, the war would follow him.
The story from Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy takes place after a huge galactic war has just swept through the galaxy, while the galaxy is still dealing with its consequences. Among those who are trying to survive and make a living in this competitive galaxy is Peter Quill and his new group for Heroes for Hire, the Guardians of the Galaxy. While hoping to make some quick cash, the group try to capture a huge monster for a wealthy collector, but a harmless bet in the middle of it against Rocket and Peter Quill triggers a series of catastrophic events that threaten the whole existence of the universe itself, and they're going to have to take responsibility for their actions while trying to take down the gold guy trying to brainwash the world. So in classic Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy fashion, they have to take responsibility by going hyperspace into the galaxy to save the universe. The story for this game is actually really good, but there are quite a few flaws within it. To be honest, it is slightly overrated, just like really slightly, because the story is still excellent, but it's just a bit overhyped despite when the game won Best Narrative at the 2021 Game Awards, which still mind boggles me because there are some games that could take it over it. But you know, let's not talk about that. What do I think about the story? The story is really well written, the pacing is good, even though it misses some steps here or there. The overall plot and execution is excellent. I find myself engaged and attached to the story because of how it's executed. It uses so many different story elements, and it makes it feel like one singular aspect. And because it's Guardians of the Galaxy, we gotta talk about the characters. And damn, they did not mess it up. What I was worried about going through this game is that it could be a carbon copy of the movie characters where they put no time, no effort, maximum profit available, but the character design and execution and how it blends in into the story is just plainly put, awesome. The gang, Peter Quill, Gamora, and of course Mr. Groot all have distinct and unique personalities. They carefully tailor each one to have different backgrounds, personalities, and have their own sense of style, which most games who can't really get a grip of. And they are not copies of the movie. They are completely different, but in a really good way. They still keep the personalities that they should have and put it on their own twist, which I really appreciate from the development team. And the dialogue, holy mackerel, it's so funny. The continuous banter from Rocket and Peter, the team fights and teases and ups and downs, and just immerses you in a way that you can connect to the characters and feel like that you are actually talking to them in real life.
It is not a castle, it is an impregnable fortress.
So how do we impregnate it?
Ask Peter!
Let's just get closer! We'll figure it out on the way!
But what really surprises me about Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is how they use aesthetics, the world, and music in the story. They use different aesthetics throughout the story to strike emotion to you as a player and set the vibe. Also, this game is not all action. It also has very emotional scenes, which does help the pacing and keeps the story not too underbalanced. But how they use music is astounding. Hard punk rock music while going through the galaxy, and the soundtrack fits every story beat in this game, but I'll talk about more of that later. And finally, the villain is kinda underwhelming. I would like more depth, and he's not really that intimidating, which I think the game wanted him to be. His dialogue is subpar at best, and sometimes he's downright annoying. Like, the Midas touch really got to him, but he's okay. He makes the story go along, so that's a big plus. But like, the big difference here from this game and the movie is that it's completely different. It's not like a carbon copy, which is insane. A completely original story. And I personally like the game more than the movie. That says a lot about the story and how it immerses you into it. The story overall is really good, but the pacing can have consistent issues and the villain can be a bit better in terms of depth, but that is overshadowed by its beautiful use of aesthetics and using different aspects of storytelling to create an immersive experience. And even if it has flaws, it is extremely outweighed by its pros, and that made it one of the best narratives I have ever experienced in a video game.
Having fun preying on the weak?
Time for the big guns!
The gameplay from Marvel licensed games over the last few years has been no short of amazing, mostly, but does Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy continue that trend? Well, it's kinda complicated. On one hand, the gameplay can be tremendously fun, and on the other, it can be downright annoying or repetitive. The gameplay works with you as Star-Lord being the character you're controlling, which is the only character you're controlling fully, but the other Guardians can be controlled too, but not fully. So basically, at its simplest form, you can bring up a menu of them when you look at an enemy, in which you can instruct certain Guardians to use their unique moves to annihilate the enemy you choose. So it's basically like a turn-based video game, but it's more action. You can take out multiple enemies at once and you're moving, but like, everyone's moving and you actually get to move a character. It's hard to explain, but speaking of that, all the Guardians have actually amazing unique moves that differentiate themselves from each other. Gamora can slice down enemies with a sword, Groot can absolutely destroy you with tree bark, Rocket Raccoon can blow you up with his overheating GPU grenades, and Drax goes rage mode because he can't go through the first tutorial in Cuphead. Star-Lord, the character you control, is not too shabby either, but it's kinda underwhelming. There are also call to action attacks, which I still don't know how the system even works, and also, since this is a teamwork based game, there's also a huddle system, which honestly I like just a little. When a huddle is ready, you can call it, and all the Guardians huddle up with you and give them a motivational speech, which definitely works. But then I don't know what your Guardians do after that. You choose the right dialogue option, and some sick music plays in the background and heals everyone's health, so okay. I guess motivational speeches do work now after all. What I would like to differentiate about the gameplay is that you could control the other Guardians. The turn-based combat style just doesn't work for this type of Guardians of the Galaxy game. The game is all about teamwork, and that is not really executed really well. It's really sloppy and unfocused at times too. Like, the huge problem for me was Star-Lord being the only character you control, which for me makes no sense, because being able to control all the other Guardians with their unique combat styles would have been amazing and a blast. And this is an action game, but like, you're just sitting there with Star-Lord, shooting guns and stuff, and just instructing. But you're just controlling Star-Lord, and not saying he's a bad character, but shooting guns with a few elemental gimmicks in there gets old real fast. Like, it's gonna get boring because there is little variety in the combat, and the only reason I chugged along is because there's new moves to be unlocked, which are pretty cool, but not enough to even elevate the mediocre gameplay. The gameplay is not bad, but it definitely leaves so much potential wasted.
We should have gone to Mako 4.
The enemy design from Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is, well, questionable. The enemies are really easy to defeat, even in large numbers, and even if it does get tough, it's not engaging enough. The enemy design can be very similar to each other, and often not, the enemies look like they're just standing there, not attacking you, and sometimes they're all over the place, not giving you breathing room to use any of the Guardians to attack the enemy, because it's so difficult to pick one. They couldn't make the enemies interesting and not generic shooting soldiers because they shove up so many enemies up your face and call it enemy design. And yeah, speaking of enemy variety, there's actually a decent ton of them. While some are actually being unique, almost every other one of them are strikingly similar in terms of their combat style, with all of them being very easy to predict and counter. It's also strange to see that a vast game in a galaxy can come up with good character designs for their enemies, like because half the time you're literally fighting literal jello, and the next half of the time they're just really just soldiers or the church people. Like, or this guy, like, look at this guy. He looks like, a leech, like 10 leeches, like, performed together. But the bosses for the game are, I think, one of the best things about this game, to be honest. Unlike the base enemies, the boss design is not that bad. And I think they did a great job using the bad gameplay mechanic of the turn-based style-esque gameplay for using the Guardians and just making the most of it. And how the bosses use different powers and moves and how you defeat them is pretty creative, in my opinion, but it's not enough to elevate the whole of the enemy design. Before we talk about one of the best things about Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, we gotta do the next best thing, the music. The music in this game bolsters a masterpiece caliber soundtrack with nostalgic 80s songs. Hardcore 80s rocks, one of the best original soundtracks I've ever heard, and the 80s songs include multiple hits like We Built a City by Starship, Everyone Built This World by Tears for Fears, and even Take On Me by Haha, or Aha. Like, how do you say this name? But anyways, I would love to play these songs for you, but the thing is, if I play them, I'd be DMCA'd faster than EA gets $1 million from microtransactions per second. So I'll stick with the original music soundtrack for now, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because the original soundtrack has absolutely excellent music with its 80s style music, solid would definitely listen to, pumping guitars and amazing singing. This soundtrack goes crazy hard, but what really is good about the game is how the game uses music to convey emotion. To elevate a scene where you're just blasting through a planet in your ship, it uses music to elevate moments that would be bland without the music. And come on, you can listen to the music in the ship, just sit and chill. That is an option. Overall, the music is absolutely amazing, and of course the licensed music as well.
His tower on the far side of the market. That's where he keeps an eye on things.
Now, for my absolutely favorite thing about Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is the atmosphere and world. Now, you might be saying, but FF7, this game is not an open world game, and yeah, you're right. But even if it isn't open world, its world and atmosphere is absolutely stunning. And the bright planets, the bustling atmospheres, vibrant colors, and the galaxy in general is beautiful, with its atmosphere being a blast to look at and play to, and how it uses emotion to its action moments, how it uses its bright planets, its atmosphere and world to all of the moments, the story moments, the action moments. It's just absolutely beautiful. Everything from the little details to even just soaking it in and taking screenshots. Like, yeah, I captured a lot of screenshots. The only problem is, I think that it could have a little more explorations. Like, some levels do have some exploration-esque gameplay in it, but I would like a little more. Although the game has collectibles, specifically costing for the Guardians, I just wish there was a little bit more incentive for this world, because it's just an amazing world that deserves to be explored. But, like, even if it's not an open world game, even though it's not meant to be explored, it's just absolutely stunning, gives this atmosphere, and gives the game its vibe, its personality, and, like, makes the game how it should be. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, for me, was a great, surprisingly awesome game. Overlooking its flaws is a huge step for Square Enix from the disastrous launch of Marvel's Avengers. Sure, there are flaws, but the gameplay can be repetitive, enemy design is a joke, sometimes there are bugs, but that can be overlooked. With its banging soundtrack, its vibe, its characters, and its beautiful world and story. So this game will be rated a mediocre 8.2 out of 10. And that's the end of another mediocre review.